All right. Hello, hello. Welcome to the Fall for Watercolor art class, day 4 of the art classes. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for joining us. Hey, Tracy. So I asked everybody who's attending live to let me know your favorite art supplies as a little, what is it called? Icebreaker. um, and Tracy says she's still dating her supplies and haven't found what she's looking for yet. Well, maybe tonight, Tracy. We're doing a workshop together. Anyway, so today we are going to be talking about the lifting technique. But before I get into that, let me do a few little housekeeping notes. We are doing the Fall for Watercolor Challenge. If you are tuning in and don't know what that is, it is a challenge in October to paint something every single day. I have a list of prompts over on Instagram, and there's like a link below that will give you all the prompts and everything. But just to encourage you to slap some paint on the page and just try it out. And then I'm also doing these live streams every Monday through Thursday from at 9 a.m. PST during the month of October. So hopefully you'll join us. Anytime you participate and tag me, that counts as an entry. So we're tallying up everything. And yeah, so get excited and definitely check out the link below after this live stream so that you can get email updates of all the activities and goings on. For those of you tuning into the replay, thank you for joining us. I can't wait to paint with you. Okay, so let's switch it from my little face here so we can get into the painting part of the agenda. I'm just going to add my second camera here for purposes so you can see the side view. Let's see if that's right. Okay, awesome. So let's add you to the stage. Getting used to all this live stream stuff. So, okay, we have our paper, we have our paints, and let's talk a little bit about what lifting is. So lifting is, actually we can probably just go, here we go. Lifting is a technique that is used to get pigment and paint from the page and kind of suck it up or absorb it or lift it. Okay, so we use this in a couple different ways for different reasons. So this can create really great highlights in your painting. If you're wanting like a soft, lighter spot, you can just apply your paint and then lift it up. It's also great for fixing mistakes, which is something that I use often. I'm kind of a messy painter, so it's always good to have my lifting tools handy just in case. And so the tools that I usually have handy are brushes are one thing that you can use to lift the paint up, and you're going to want an absorbent brush. So if you are new to watercolor, if you look on a site like Princeton Brushes, they will have little specifications about the brushes and its absorbency. Hi, Lisa. Good morning. So if you are looking for a brush, you're going to want something that holds a lot of water. So anything that has the word aqua in it or high absorbency is going to be a really great option. So something that's like thick, that looks like it would be like, you know, think about it. Which rag do you pick when you're cleaning up a spill off the kitchen floor? Do you pick the, you know, the thin kind of like whatever one, or do you pick like the most absorbent plush one that you can find? So definitely think about that when you're thinking about brushes. Another thing that you can use, because let's be honest, nothing does it like a paper towel. So I take paper towels and I cut them up into little pieces, and I like to have these handy. Otherwise, I just like kind of rip little pieces from my paper towel, but nothing is going to work better than a paper towel. I'm going to be honest. We're not skimping here. We got our Brawny or our Bounty. And this is going to be really helpful in the case of like if you spill something and it's a big mess, or you really want a really strong highlight, I would say paper towels are going to be like the best option. And then here I also have Q-tips. This can also be helpful. I don't use them as much, but it can be nice to get just like, if you wanted like little dots, you could kind of use it like that to create that, the bokeh effect, those kind of twinkle lights. So this would be great if you're doing like Christmas lights on a tree. Okay, so let's see what some people's favorite supplies are. Oh, Lisa's only here while she's putting grandbaby down. So fun. Jessica says she loves all the paints, but I can't help but overload when I see new things. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And then Analia says, I really need that lifting brush. So this one is a great one. Anything in the Princeton Neptune series is going to be awesome. I also think their Aqua Elite line is really great for absorbent brushes. Quill brushes, I think, are really good. Another really great brand, I'm grabbing it, are these silver black velvet brushes. These are going to be really great for scooping up extra liquid. And these are really nice for loose watercolors as well. If you're curious about which brushes I use, I have them all listed in my supply list. So that should be in the link in my bio if you're on social medias. So I love Lisa says, I love the watercolor dots. Right now she's loving some Daniel Smith dots because they're a cheaper way to play with some really nice paints. Ah, yes, girl after my own heart. Try those paints out. Woo! Okay, shall we get to lifting? Without further ado. So we're going to be using a lot of like really juicy mixtures today. You know, I'm feeling my quinacridone lake, so we're going to just activate that. I'm using my size 12 Princeton Neptune brush. And let's go ahead and apply just kind of a line of really juicy paint. You can do this along with me, or if you just want to watch, that's okay. And then try it later. I'm just going to kind of quickly show what this can look like. And the lifting technique is one that will work really great as long as your paint area that's in your water barrier is wet. So as soon as it dries, you're kind of SOL. Okay, so now I have my towel here. Okay, it's my Infinity Arts towel. And I am drying my brush off. I really like to dry my brush, kind of keeping the fibers of the brush, the hairs of the brush together. Like I'm not like, we don't do that. Okay, so now that I've dried my brush, I'm just going to use the belly of my brush, this big, fat, thick part, and I'm going to soak up some of that paint. Okay, now I'm going to wet my brush and clean that off. I'm going to go again, and then I'm going to go right back in. So you're not coming onto the page with a wet brush, just slightly damp, but you really want to get as much water out of your brush as you can in between each one. And that's pretty light, okay? So I'm pretty happy with that. Now I'm going to show you the difference of a paper towel, okay? Actually, let's do a difference of like this. So this is a Princeton Select. I don't find these to be as absorbent. It just takes a little bit more work and it doesn't quite soak it up. It just kind of pushes the paint around in my opinion. I love these brushes for many things and lifting is not one of those things. I just find it isn't quite as effective. Okay, so let's look at the paper towel. We're gonna just do a little bit right here. See, I only had to dab that once and we're good to go. The difference between this right here, where we use the brush, and this right here is this has created a dry line. So if you watched our lesson on water barriers, you'll know anywhere that's dry, the paint is not going to soak into. So we are going to get a harder line here on this edge of where we dried it. Whereas this, you can see, let's see if we can zoom in a little bit. It's a nice fading effect. So it really just depends on what look you're trying to achieve. Like, are we trying to, you know, lift a spill here like that? Oopsie, just grab my little paper towel and it's like it's not even there. Awesome. Or are we trying to create a highlight on something that's kind of soft? So here we go. All right, so another thing I wanted to mention is if you're wanting something completely white, like we use the white of our page to create those brightest highlights. So anything that you leave completely unpainted is going to be the brightest part of your painting. And in order to do that, you can see the paper towel does work pretty well. It does have some of these little tendrils. The best way to do that is going to be to use something called masking fluid. Okay, so this is the one that I like. This is the Winsor & Newton. There are tons of different masking fluids, and some people swear by one, some people swear by the other. There are so many options. This one is my favorite because I find I can put it over areas that I've painted and it will not lift up too much of the paint. And it really is gentle on my paper. And you can find a link to this. I'm going to be sending out an email this weekend with a link to this, but it's also in my supply list because we are going to be doing a masking lesson next week. Okay. So here, I just want to take a moment to take a look at what some folks are saying about their favorite supplies. So we have Lisa loves watercolor dots. She's loving Daniel Smith. Great. And then Des loves the black silver or the silver black velvet. Also love Winsor & Newton and Daniel Smith. Those are some of my favorite paints too. Hello, my favorite supplies right now are metallic watercolors. I'm such a sucker for anything sparkly. So Rachel, if you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend Dreamland Watercolors. I used to be an ambassador for them before I got like too busy with, I don't know, kids, whatever. But Dreamland Watercolors is a great option. And then the other one is Claire Chi Studio, and she is abroad. So if you're in the US, the shipping is expensive, but it is worth every penny. They're so beautiful. Okay, so VS. Favorite is my good paper. So VS Ty, what paper are you using? What's your favorite? And Elle says, this is so cool. I just read about this. Elle, yay! I'm so glad you're here. Awesome. Okay, so we've got some good supply recommendations. I just didn't want to sleep on that because you guys had really great suggestions. I currently am using my Mayberry Blue paints, and they are like just so yummy. I'm going to show you one of them so you can kind of see what the label looks like. But this is my newest go-to paint. I kind of think that I'm going to remake my palette with just my favorite paints pretty soon. And this one, like this brand is definitely going to be the majority of the paints, I think. So that's that. Okay, so for lifting, back to lifting. Focus, Kate. All right, and here, let's see, VS says Arches for final paintings and Strathmore for practice and fun. Love it. Awesome. So now for lifting, let's, I did want to show you like one more technique. So sometimes with like petals, oh gosh, I wish I could remember the artist's name, but she does this really beautiful thing with petals, and she makes it just look so ephemeral and just whimsical. So what she'll do is she gets the pigment over it, and this is how I'm imagining that she does it, but the effect is then you lift, you can kind of even drop some water in to like push the pigment off to the sides, okay? And so I'm kind of pushing this pigment off to the side, and then I'm going to lift the paint here off the middle. Might even put a little bit more water here, kind of push that paint and not to the sides. And I'm lifting. Of course, I'm using my brush that doesn't lift very well. I mean, see, it works fine, but it's like just not as efficient as this little cutie here. Oh, how pretty is that? And then I might just kind of drop some water in to further push it. So you can see that the water is pushing the pigment to the edges of our water barrier. And I'm kind of coaxing it out to the sides. And it creates this really cool outline. And when we're doing washes too, sometimes you might have a little bit of extra, like, let's say we're trying to make a really nice flat wash, and you might just have some extra paint kind of swirling around. You can always just pick up a little bit with the tip of your brush. So it doesn't always have to be the belly of the brush. You can always just kind of dab, dab, dab in those areas that are holding that extra moisture to even out how it's going to dry. So what do you do if you realize that your paper has dried, like up here, but you still wanted to lift some paint? You're like, oh shoot, I think that needs to be lighter. So here's the scoop. You can do that. The quicker you do it after the paint has dried, the better. So let's take a moment and talk about how we're going to lift some paint here. So I'm going to dampen my brush. And for this, I actually am going to want to use a little bit of a stiffer brush. This is pretty snappy and stiff. So I'm going to wet my Princeton Select. Any brush will work, but I think this is going to work really well for this. And I'm going to dampen the area really gently because we're going to be kind of giving our paper a little bit of a workout. So really gently dampen that paper, and you can lift it a little bit by using our lifting technique. But it's probably going to be more effective to dab, dab, dab with your paper towel. So you'll see this is kind of an event, but if you keep going at it very gently over time, and I'm just kind of worrying the paper. Imagine you're holding a baby blanket and kind of going like that. Can you tell we're like a high sensory seeking family? That's what we're doing here, that kind of back and forth, gentle, gentle movements. Okay, like you're handling like a delicate silk. I don't know. These are very weird references today. And then I'm just dabbing. I'm not scrubbing. Scrubbing is going to ruin the integrity of your paper. Yeah, isn't that cute? So yes, I love how that petal turned out. Yeah, I love it, love it, love it. It's going to look even cooler as it dries. So is this tedious? Absolutely. But is it nice to know that there are options once you've gotten your paper dry? Oh yeah. I also like to use these Koi coloring brush pens, but any like clear marker pen is going to do a great job. So let's kind of show you how. I mean, same thing. We're going to write with this. Sorry, my kiddos are upstairs. It sounds like somebody's hurt. Hopefully, I mean, it's fine, but it's just a little boo-boo. I can tell. So this is going to ruin your paper a little bit more. So if you're planning to paint over an area, I don't really recommend this, but it's really great for like mistakes or cleaning up edges around the paper that like where your tape might have bled. That's a really great option. There is another option. You know, I kind of wasn't intending to go into this erasing piece, but since we're here, there are these brushes. They're called scrubber brushes, and they are really stiff. Let's see, really stiff tips, and this is probably going to be most effective once it's dried. You're just going to want to go, so you wet it, and then you just kind of dab on your paper and just really gently. Okay, imagine you're like you know, think about if you're putting on makeup on your eyelid, like you're not too intense with it, right? Because that's delicate skin. So this is really going to clean that area up the best. You can dab with your paper towel to really lift that up. I'm kind of cleaning it out too. Again, this isn't super delicate on your paper, but it is efficient. So I will often use this to tidy up the edges of my paper after I've pulled the tape up, if there's like a little mark that just is there for fun. So these are a lot of lifting tools. So your brush, you can use a scrubber brush. You can use one of these clear markers. Tombow has some clear ones too. They're like the blending markers. Paper towels, Q-tips, really anything absorbent is great to have on hand. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into our apple, shall we? So we're going to do a nice little sketch here because Lord knows when I'm left without an outline, who knows what's going to happen here. So I'm not going to do like a super realistic apple. We're just going to kind of do like, you know, the best we can. And then I'll do like a little leaf and a stem. Okay, love it. Let's erase that little line. All right, so first thing we're going to do is, I don't even know if you can see the outline, but first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a nice wash over this apple. Let's make it red. So go ahead and grab your red paint. I'm doing kind of like a red orange. Now you can go really wild with layers. I like to usually start apples with a yellow, but we're just going to make it nice, sweet and easy. And we're just going to do a nice red. So we're covering a big area. You're going to want to grab a nice big brush and mix up a big paint puddle so you have a lot to draw from. Okay. So I'm leaving where the leaf is. I'm not painting in there. Oh, this brush is so fun. Not sponsored, just a fan. Though I should reach out to Princeton. I talk about them enough, don't I? Okay, so we have our nice wash here. So if I were trying to get a really even wash, I might suck up some of the moisture here on these edges. See how there's a little bit pooling there? But what I really want to do is add a highlight right here. So I'm going to go back and forth from my water cup. And usually I have my towel on the side where my brushes are, but just so you can kind of see everything. I'm cleaning my brush off. I'm picking up more of that paint. I'm rinsing. I'm drying. I'm picking up more of that paint. I'm rinsing. I'm drying. I'm picking up more of that paint. Rinsing, drying, picking up more of that paint. I want this to be a really nice, bold highlight. You don't have to rinse every time if you don't want to. I think it just, you could just wipe it on your towel, but if you're wanting like a really nice clean, especially if you're, if you're wanting like a nice crisp highlight, I recommend that. Okay, so I think that's good. I'm actually going to just dampen these edges a little bit because if this area gets too dry, then the blending isn't going to be as smooth. So I'm just making a nice, just making sure everything's hydrated. And I am going to actually drop in a little bit more color over here down at the bottom we talked in some of our previous videos about wet and wet. So while this is still wet is a great opportunity to drop in those shadows. And apples are cool because they've got all kinds of awesome like texture and color variation. So I feel like it's a very forgiving subject to use. I'm gonna drop in some of this I'm just feeling it. Is this what color an apple would be? No, but I just really wanted to see that color today. And you know, maybe there's like a little yellow somewhere in here, okay? You know, maybe it's not totally ripe all the way yet. Maybe we've got a little bit of yellow and green happening up there. Sometimes the apples are kind of streaky, so I can pull that paint down. Maybe even a little green. And while this is wet, you can get bananas. Oh, I have a little dot here, so I'm going to use my paper towel to just kind of grab that. It's been sitting there for a bit, so there is a little bit of a shadow, so I can always go back and work that out, but right now I'm not going to worry about it too much. Okay, so that's our apple for now. If you want to add more layers to really deepen it, you can, but I think that's good. What we're going to do now is we're going to work on our leaf. Now, remember, we don't want to, I don't really want my leaf to get into this apple. So keep in mind your water barrier. I'm going to keep this green water barrier away from my apple, and I'm going to do that by leaving the tiniest line of white in between the apple and the leaf. I'm probably going to get back in there and use my smaller brush to really get that closer, that line a little bit more precise. So I've got my smaller Neptune brush. This one has like a really nice point here. And I'm just really getting nice and close to the edge. Now let's see if we can. Do you see how I'm just using the very tip of my brush to get close to that edge there? And I'm also going to use some lifting on here. You know, leaves are kind of shiny. They are not always going to be like one flat color, right? So here I'm lifting a little bit of the paint up just on one side, give it a little dimension. And then I'm going to come back in with some brown for the stem. So I like mixing up like a burnt sienna and indigo for a brown, maybe adding in a little bit yellow to make it a little warmer. If you do a little bit more indigo, it's going to be more of a black, which is cool. All right. Again, I'm using very tippy tip of my brush to make sure we don't have any oh my gosh, do you see? I told you I'm a messy painter. All right, so Nikki has said, I don't have any favorites yet, just getting started with watercolor, but definitely looking for things to add to my wish list. So I have a blog post about great watercolor supplies for different budgets. So if you're looking to kind of add things to your holiday shopping list or whatever, that's a really great place to check that out. So I think I posted to it. I think I sent an email out with that information, with that link at some point. So let me know if you need that link. Yeah, so we'll let this dry for a little bit. I'm gonna clean up this edge with you. We're gonna zoom in and really look at that edge. If you have any questions about lifting or watercolor in general, now is a really great time to ask. Another fun thing to do is once this dries, you could actually go over it again with a second layer and then do another round of lifting. And the cool thing about that is once this is dry, and this is actually what we're going to talk about on Monday, it's called the glaze technique, but then you're deepening this side because it has 2 layers of paint. So like think of like colored cellophane or something. If you have 2 or 3 layers, it's going to be a lot darker. The colors are going to be a lot richer. But if you keep lightening this up, it's going to really make that contrast pop. So let's, I'm probably going to just go ahead and, no, because I don't want to fuss with this too much, because if you can see, I'm going to pull it in close on the little camera. Do you see how it's connected to the apple? Like this one I could tackle right now, the one that's not connected, but I don't want to introduce any water to this area until it's totally dry. Otherwise, we're going to get a nice bloom. So maybe it would be beneficial to show you what that looks like. Okay, so I lied. I'm going to do it right now. All right, so I'm using I actually think I might use the scrubber for this, okay? And let's get you over here. And I think I'm gonna just do this camera so you can really see. So I'm wetting my brush and I am going along that edge. And it might actually be dry enough, so we'll see. And I'm just kind of dab, 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 going slowly. Oh no, yeah. Can you see how this is now a little bit lighter right there? It's very subtle, but because I introduced water to this edge, it's actually lightening up that part of the apple. Yeah, it's a little bit more visible here. So I can try to kind of get that water with my towel. But as we keep introducing water to that side, it is messing with our water barrier and introducing more water. So we are going to have this, this bloom. So a little fun fact, the name of my company is Splatter and Bloom, and that's because bloom is a watercolor pun. All right, I feel like that's not great lighting. So let's go here instead. Do you see how it's just ever so slightly seeping into our apple? So did it clear the area up? Yeah, and if I had given it a little bit more attention, it would be really nice and crisp. But this is why we want to wait until it's totally, totally dry before we start cleaning up those edges. Okay, so let's dry this off and then do a second layer, show you the glaze, give you a little preview for next week, and just deepen this highlight here. Okay, you ready? I'm going to turn this on, so hold your ears. Okay, so here's something kind of fun. I don't know where it came from, but there's like a little rogue salt crystal right there. And salt will actually suck up the pigment. And so it's almost its own little lifting technique. So that's kind of a fun little surprise that helps illustrate our lesson today. All right, so let's do another layer of wash. I'm gonna kind of mix up a similar color, maybe like a little bit more yellow in this one this time around. Yeah. Okay, so let's do a nice juicy layer of that. Make sure you've got a good little paint puddle going. I'm gonna just do a nice flat wash here. Stay in the lines if you can. If not, that's okay. Staying in the lines is overrated. So I'm going to get ahead of myself and start talking about how much I love the glaze technique, but I just love it. It adds this depth to your painting that you just can't get with one layer. Like, yummy. Okay. So let's go ahead and lift over the same spot that we were lifting before. Okay. So once again, we're using the clean brush, dry brush, lift. Clean brush, dry brush, lift. And I am using Canson Montval watercolor paper here, and I am noticing that my paper is starting to say, thank you, ma'am, I am done. I can tell just because the paint is kind of sitting in those ridges. So I might take just my paper towel, just so I'm not being so rough on it with the bristles. I really like Canson's Montval paper as a practice paper, but I will say like nothing holds up like Arches does in terms of how many layers you can get in. So let's just kind of re-moisturize here, get a nice transition for that highlight. I just, in terms of like apple anatomy, I think the highlight would probably be a little bit more up. So now I'm just fussing, but I think that's nice. All right. Oh, so yes, this brush that I'm using is the Princeton Neptune brushes. So these ones are pretty new, but they're new to me, but I love them. I'm really happy with the Princeton Neptune brushes. Okay. I feel like we need a little more attention to our leaf just because now that we've done the second layer of our apple, I just kind of feel like the leaf looks a little sad. So what I'm going to do is I am doing a nice little wash on here. And then I'm also going to do a wash on the other side of the leaf, but I'm going to leave a little gap to give this semblance of the stem vein thing. Just a little emphasis. And I'm actually not even going to paint the top tip of that because I do want to keep that in the highlight. All right, and then let's add a little detail to our stem just to give it some dimension. My rule of thumb is like if you're going to add a second layer to part of your main subject, you kind of got to do it for the rest of your main subject. Like you don't want it to look like you worked more layers on one part than the other. I think if you're trying to get like things in the background and have that kind of ephemeral nature of like wet and wet, then that's fine. But like if you have two things in the foreground and one has two layers and one doesn't, it's going to look incomplete. All right. There we go. There's our apple. What do you think? I think this is one of those techniques that not only saves my butt, but I also use a lot with petals and when doing flowers and any smooth shapes. This is really helpful to know. You can see here that I introduced a little bit more water once this part was already drying. But you know what? I love it. Like, this is a bloom, but it is part of my painting now. You know, I could probably fuss with that and even that out right now with like a very lightly damp brush, but I just want to let it happen. I think it has character, personality. I love it. Sorry, apple. Crunch, crunch. All right. So thank you so much for joining. We are taking a break from our morning lives until Monday. So I will see you back on Monday for the apple. Or nope, we just did the apple. We're going to paint a gourd using the glaze technique, which I told you is my favorite. And today we're painting a birch leaf. And we'll have some daily painting. Today's daily painting is the birch leaf, and then we're moving from leaves onto kind of garden veggie things coming up into the next week of the daily painting challenge. So thank you so much for joining. Definitely sign up for the Fall for Watercolor Challenge in the link below if you haven't already. That is the way that you get officially added into the challenge. And then we add up the other totals and add them to your names. So thank you so much. Everybody have a great day. All right. Bye.